Shadows of war and stars. The night sky above the barren battlefield was alight with fire. A dying planet stretched beneath the feet of Commander Rylan Voss, its surface scarred by years of war. The battle for Taraxis had raged for nearly a decade, an endless cycle of bloodshed between humanity and the Zalari, an alien race as enigmatic as they were deadly. Rylan gritted his teeth as his squad advanced through the rubble of a long-abandoned Zalari outpost. His orders were clear: infiltrate, retrieve intel, and exterminate any remaining hostiles. Yet, in the back of his mind, doubt gnawed at him. The Zalari were retreating too easily. Something wasn't right. "Commander, we're too exposed," said Sergeant Kellen Lyer, his voice tense over the comms. "Feels like a goddamn trap." Rylan scanned the wreckage with sharp, calculating eyes. "Stay alert. We move in and out, fast." The squad pressed forward, their boots crunching over glass and debris. The ruins of the outpost loomed ahead, alien structures twisted and half-sunken into the earth. Strange glyphs shimmered faintly on the walls, whispering of secrets buried deep. Private Ilya Varick, the team's recon specialist, crouched near a broken column, her visor glowing as she scanned the area. "No movement, but the energy readings are." A screech echoed from the darkness. Then, the world exploded. Blinding blue light erupted from the ruins, and Rylan barely had time to shout before the ground beneath them gave way. He plummeted into darkness, the shouts of his squad cut off as debris rained around him. Pain shot through his ribs as he landed hard, the breath ripped from his lungs. The air smelled of scorched stone and something else, something ancient. He pushed himself up, his visor flickering with damage, and froze. He wasn't alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and otherworldly. Deep violet eyes regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Her armor shimmered like liquid silver, and strange markings glowed faintly across her skin. Rylan had seen her face before. Every human soldier had. Queen Zyra, the ruler of the Zalari. The enemy of humanity. "You survived the fall," she said, her voice smooth, almost amused. "Impressive." Rylan reached for his weapon, but before he could fire, something unseen gripped his limbs, locking him in place. A force pulsed around him, something he had no name for, holding him like a prisoner of the stars. "You are bold," Zyra continued, stepping closer. "To come here, to challenge forces beyond your understanding." Rylan's mind raced. He should have been dead. The Zalari never took prisoners. And yet, here he was, standing before the most powerful being in their ranks. "You're wasting your time," he growled. "Kill me and get it over with." Zyra tilted her head, studying him as if he were a puzzle to be solved. "So eager to die. But I did not bring you here to kill you, human. I brought you here because we have a greater enemy." Rylan's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Zyra's gaze darkened. "The war between our people is a lie. The true enemy has yet to reveal itself." His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Was this a trick? A trap? Yet something in her voice, something in the way she held herself, felt too real to ignore. "Why should I believe you?" he asked. Zyra stepped even closer, and the air between them seemed to hum with power. "Because, Commander Voss, whether you trust me or not, your survival depends on it." And in that moment, Rylan realized that his war was far from over. It was only just beginning. A fragile bargain. The silence between them stretched, heavy and suffocating. Rylan Voss stood rigid, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring, ready to strike. Queen Zyra's violet eyes never wavered as she studied him, the glow of the strange glyphs around them casting flickering shadows across her silver-hued armor. "You expect me to believe that after years of war?" Rylan spat, his voice edged with disbelief. "That there's some greater enemy beyond your people slaughtering mine?" Zyra let out a quiet sigh, tilting her head slightly. Your people assume we fight simply to conquer. We do not. Rylan barked a bitter laugh. Then what the hell do you call the last 10 years? Zyra took a slow step forward, her presence radiating something unexplainable. A war of survival, she said. Not against humans. Against something older than both of our species. Rylan's jaw tightened. His instincts screamed at him to keep resisting, but something about her words, her tone, there was no arrogance, no malice. Only certainty. Still, he refused to let himself be swayed so easily. Why should I trust you? He asked, his voice low. Zyra studied him carefully before answering. Because if I wanted you dead, you would already be. The energy binding his limbs suddenly vanished. Rylan staggered slightly before regaining his footing, immediately raising his rifle. Zyra didn't flinch. Slowly, her eyes flicked toward the ruins around them. We don't have much time. If you want proof of what I say, come with me. If not, you're free to try your weapon. Rylan's grip on his rifle tightened, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He could shoot her. Right here. Right now. But something in his gut told him that would be a mistake. His earpiece crackled. Static. No signal from his team. No way to call for backup. He was alone. And his best chance of surviving this was standing right in front of him. Finally, he exhaled through gritted teeth. Fine. But the second I think you're lying. Zyra's lips curved into something resembling a smirk. I would expect nothing less, Commander. Deep in the ruins. The air was thick with dust and an odd metallic scent. The deeper they walked into the underground chamber, the more Rylan felt something pressing against the edges of his mind, like a whisper just out of reach. Zyra moved with purpose, her fingers grazing the alien glyphs etched into the walls. At her touch, they pulsed with faint silver light, illuminating a massive structure ahead. A monolithic door, carved with intricate patterns, stood before them. Its surface was cracked, but the energy within it still pulsed. What is this place? Rylan asked warily. Zyra's expression grew somber. The tomb of our ancestors. And the prison of what they tried to bury. Rylan frowned. A prison? Zyra turned to him, and for the first time, Rylan saw something unexpected in her eyes. Not power. Not calculation. Fear. The war between our species, she said softly. It was never meant to happen. Long ago, before your people reached the stars, the Zalari fought against something far worse. A force that nearly wiped us from existence. Rylan remained silent, waiting. Zyra's fingers brushed over the carvings again, and the air seemed to thrum in response. We defeated them. But we could not destroy them. So we sealed them away. Buried them in places like this. And now, she turned to face him fully. That seal is failing. Rylan stared at the door, his pulse quickening. So what does this have to do with me? Zyra hesitated, then extended her hand toward the monolith. Energy pulsed from her fingertips, and for a brief moment, Rylan swore he saw something shift beneath the surface of the door, something writhing. Zyra lowered her hand, her expression unreadable. The seal requires two beings to restore it. One Zalari. She met his gaze. And one human. Rylan's breath caught. You expect me to help you? Just like that? Zyra tilted her head slightly. I expect you to understand what is at stake. Rylan clenched his fists. This was insane. A mission gone horribly wrong, an enemy queen telling him humanity had been fighting the wrong war, and now he was supposed to trust her? But deep down, something about her words felt right. He had always known there was more to this war than what the officials back on Earth told them. And now he stood at the edge of an answer he never saw coming. And an even bigger question. Rylan inhaled sharply. If I help you, he locked eyes with her. You swear to tell me everything? Zyra held his gaze. I swear. Rylan exhaled, his mind screaming at him to walk away. But he ignored it. Then let's get this over with. Zyra nodded once, then turned back to the door. The moment they placed their hands upon it, the ruins began to tremble. And something on the other side stirred. The forbidden key. The chamber trembled, a deep, resonating hum filling the air as Rylan and Zyra pressed their hands against the monolithic door. Ancient energy surged beneath their fingertips, pulsing like a heartbeat. Rylan gritted his teeth as a sharp, unnatural cold spread through his arm, racing up to his chest. His mind filled with fleeting visions, twisting shadows, cities crumbling, alien screams lost in the void. He yanked his hand back instinctively, stumbling a step away. What the hell was that? He demanded, his breath ragged. Zyra didn't answer immediately. Her violet eyes were unfocused, her expression grave. When she finally turned to him, her voice was quieter than before. The seal is failing faster than I feared. Rylan flexed his fingers, still feeling the phantom chill in his bones. You said we were here to restore it. What do we do? Zyra hesitated. We must find the key. Rylan's jaw tightened. Of course, there was always a key. And where exactly is this key? Zyra turned her gaze to the far end of the chamber, where a series of ancient pathways spiraled downward into darkness. Below. Rylan let out a slow exhale, steadying himself. Figures. Descending into the depths. The tunnels beneath the chamber were unlike anything Rylan had seen before. The walls pulsed with faint bioluminescent patterns, shifting as if alive. The deeper they went, the heavier the air became, thick with something indescribable, something ancient. Zyra moved ahead of him, her fingers tracing the strange symbols as they walked. This place predates even my ancestors, she murmured. A warning, etched in time. Rylan glanced at the markings. He couldn't read them, but they radiated a sense of unease. We should hurry, he muttered. They pressed forward, their footsteps echoing through the stillness. Then, just as they reached a wide-open chamber, the ground trembled beneath them. Something had awakened. A low, guttural sound filled the air. Rylan's instincts screamed a warning. He raised his rifle just as a figure lunged from the shadows. It wasn't Zalari. And it sure as hell wasn't human. The guardians of the key. The creature that emerged from the dark was unlike anything Rylan had ever seen. Its elongated form shimmered, not solid but shifting between shapes, its body composed of writhing energy. Hollow eyes fixed on them, and when it spoke, its voice was layered, an echo of thousands. Unwelcome. Zyra stepped forward, her stance regal and unshaken. We are not your enemies. The entity tilted its head, the flickering light of its form shifting erratically. You are the betrayer's kin. You are the bringers of ruin. Rylan tightened his grip on his weapon. Not exactly a warm welcome. Zyra remained composed. We seek the key to restore the seal. A silence stretched between them. Then, the entity's form pulsed with a deep crimson light. You come too late. The key is already claimed. Rylan's stomach clenched. By who? Before the entity could answer, the chamber trembled violently. The walls cracked, and a surge of unnatural energy pulsed through the air. Zyra's expression darkened. They are here. Rylan turned, raising his rifle. Who? Zyra met his gaze. The ones who seek to break the seal. And then the chamber erupted into chaos. Betrayal and pursuit. Figures descended from the tunnels above, their weapons humming with deadly energy. Zalari, but not Zyra's people, rebels. Their armor was darker, their markings twisted versions of what Zyra bore. Leading them was a tall figure with piercing golden eyes. Queen Zyra, the figure sneered. I knew you would come crawling. Zyra's posture remained firm. Varen, she said, her voice laced with disdain. You do not understand what you are unleashing. Varen smirked. Oh, but I do. His gaze flicked to Rylan. And you brought a human with you? How desperate you must be. Rylan raised his rifle, but Zyra lifted a hand, signaling restraint. We don't have time for this, she said coldly. If the seal breaks, it will consume us all. Varen chuckled darkly. That's the idea. Before Rylan could process his words, Varen raised a hand. The walls cracked, and a deep, primal roar echoed from beneath them. The seal was breaking. Rylan barely had time to react before the entire chamber collapsed around them. A desperate escape. Dust and debris filled the air as Rylan scrambled to his feet, his ears ringing. Zyra stood nearby, her form barely visible through the haze. Varen and his rebels were gone, vanished into the depths. We need to move, Zyra urged, urgency lacing her voice. Rylan clenched his jaw. They have the key, don't they? Zyra nodded grimly. If they use it, nothing will stop what's coming. Rylan exhaled sharply. This was no longer just a war. This was the beginning of something far worse. And humanity had no idea what was coming. Fractured trust, entwined fate. The tunnels shook with the force of an impending catastrophe. Rylan Voss sprinted behind Zyra, his pulse hammering in his ears as dust and debris rained down around them. The rebels had escaped with the key, and now the seal, this so-called ancient prison, was on the verge of breaking. This whole place is going to collapse. Rylan shouted over the roar of shifting stone. Zyra didn't slow. We must get to the surface. If Varen activates the key before we can stop him. Her words were cut off as a violent tremor knocked them both off balance. Rylan cursed as he hit the ground, rolling instinctively into a crouch. His visor flickered, momentarily distorting his view, but when it cleared, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The walls of the ruins were changing. Strange, pulsating veins of black energy snaked through the cracks, spreading like infection. The glyphs that once glowed softly with silver light were now twisting, warping into something unrecognizable. The very air felt heavier, saturated with a power that didn't belong in this world. Rylan locked eyes with Zyra. Tell me this is normal. Her expression was grim. It is the first sign. He frowned. Of what? Zyra hesitated for half a breath. Then, she whispered, the awakening. A chill crawled down Rylan's spine. An uneasy alliance. By the time they reached the surface, the landscape of Valen, 6 had changed. The once still sky churned with dark clouds, crackling with veins of unnatural blue lightning. The ground trembled in irregular pulses, as if something beneath the planet's crust was breathing. Rylan took a steadying breath, scanning the horizon. All right, Zyra. Tell me you've got a plan, because I'm starting to think I should have just let you kill me back in that chamber. Zyra gave him an exasperated look before turning her gaze toward the distant ruins. Varen will not activate the key immediately. He will take it to the obsidian spire. Rylan's brow furrowed. That sounds ominous. It is. Zyra's voice was tight. The spire was once a stronghold for the keepers of the seal. If Varen has chosen that place, then he seeks to harness the key's power rather than simply breaking the seal. Rylan exhaled sharply. So we're up against rebels who want to unleash an ancient cosmic horror, and their leader thinks he can control it. He shook his head. Perfect. That never goes wrong. Zyra gave him a pointed look. Which is why we must stop him before he learns how. Rylan ran a hand through his sweat-damp hair. All right. But first, we have another problem. Zyra raised a brow. And what would that be? Rylan motioned to the sky. A human warship was descending. The cost of loyalty. The ISS Revenant was an intimidating sight. A heavily armored battlecruiser, its dark hull gleamed under the storm-choked sky, gun turrets rotating with lethal precision. Ryland's stomach twisted as he recognized the insignia on its side. Colonel de Vera. Shit, he muttered. Zyra turned to him, sharp and calculating. Your people? Ryland nodded grimly. And not the friendly kind. A voice crackled over his communicator. Commander Voss, this is Colonel de Vera of the Revenant. You are ordered to stand down. Ryland clenched his jaw. He could already picture the colonel's expression, cold, unwavering. Another voice cut in. Voss, you better still be breathing down there. Ryland's breath caught. He knew that voice. Lieutenant Eric Dane. Once, Eric had been more than just a fellow soldier. He had been Ryland's closest friend. Before everything went to hell. Eric, Ryland muttered, pressing a hand to his earpiece. You're with Revenant now? A pause. Then, a low chuckle. Yeah. And you? Looks like you made some interesting choices. Ryland exhaled sharply. It's not what it looks like. That so? Eric's voice turned colder. Because from up here, it looks like you went native. Ryland's grip tightened around his rifle. I don't have time for this. There's something bigger at play here, Eric. You need to tell de Vera to. You think she's going to listen to me? Eric cut him off. You're already a ghost as far as Earth Command is concerned. Ryland felt a deep, sinking feeling in his gut. He had suspected it the moment he lost contact with his squad, but hearing it confirmed was something else. They had written him off. He was officially a traitor. A choice with no return. The Revenant's landing craft deployed, soldiers pouring out in precise formation. Their weapons were raised, trained directly on Ryland and Zyra. De Vera stepped forward, her expression unreadable behind her polished visor. You have one chance, Commander. Stand down, and surrender the Zalari Queen. Zyra tensed beside him, but she said nothing. This was Ryland's moment. His choice. The one that would decide everything. Ryland inhaled slowly. He could see Eric standing behind de Vera, arms crossed, waiting for an answer. If he turned Zyra in, maybe, just maybe, he could salvage what was left of his career. His life. But then what? They'd interrogate Zyra. They'd never believe her about the seal, the key, the greater threat looming over them all. And then the universe would burn. Ryland tightened his grip on his rifle. I can't do that, Colonel. A long silence followed. Then, de Vera exhaled, almost disappointed. I thought as much. She lifted a hand. Kill them both. The world erupted into gunfire. Escape into the storm. Ryland ducked, rolling behind cover as bullets and plasma rounds tore through the air. Zyra moved like flowing water, weaving through the chaos, her energy shield flickering against the onslaught. We need to move, she shouted. Ryland popped up from cover, firing a controlled burst to keep the soldiers at bay. Working on it. His mind raced. They were outgunned, outnumbered, this was a death trap. Then, a low rumble split the air. The ground beneath them shifted. Zyra's eyes widened. The seal. A shockwave of raw energy erupted from the horizon, shattering the air with a deafening boom. Ryland barely had time to process what was happening before the storm swallowed them whole. The final threshold. The world was chaos. A surge of raw, unnatural energy tore through the battlefield, consuming soldiers and rebels alike. The air crackled with violet lightning, and the very ground beneath them breathed, pulsing like a living thing. Rylan Voss barely had time to react before the force slammed into him, sending his body hurtling backward. His ears rang. His vision blurred. When he finally managed to push himself up from the cracked earth, he saw the storm twisting above them, forming a spiraling vortex in the sky. Something had awakened. And it was no longer waiting. A battlefield divided. Gunfire still rang out through the ruined terrain, but it was fading, swallowed by the storm. The Revenant soldiers scrambled to regroup, their formations shattered. Colonel de Vera barked orders through her comms, but static was all that answered. Rylan turned his head, searching. There. Zyra was on one knee, her body trembling as energy coiled around her form. Her violet eyes glowed brighter than ever, and for the first time, Rylan saw something that unsettled him. Not just determination. Not just power. But strain. She was holding something back. Rylan rushed toward her, dodging stray gunfire as he skidded to her side. Zyra. Talk to me. She barely turned her head, her voice tight. The seal. It is unraveling faster than I expected. Rylan clenched his jaw. Then we need to get to the spire. Now. Zyra exhaled sharply, forcing herself to stand. She swayed slightly, and Rylan instinctively reached out to steady her. The moment his hand met her arm, a shock of energy jolted through him. Visions. A great void. A hunger beyond mortal comprehension. A presence, waiting just beyond the veil, its voice echoing in his skull. You cannot stop what is already begun. Rylan sucked in a sharp breath and ripped his hand away, his heart hammering. Zyra's gaze met his. She had seen it too. There was no more time. The pursuit of the key. Through the howling storm, they moved. The obsidian spire loomed in the distance, its dark silhouette cutting against the shifting sky. Lightning lanced down from above, striking the ancient structure, as if the planet itself was rebelling against what was about to happen. Varen was already there. Rylan could see the flickering glow at the top of the spire, a swirling mass of corrupted energy, the key, being prepared for activation. Can you stop it? Rylan asked, his voice barely audible over the storm. Zyra's expression was grim. If we reach it in time. Rylan nodded. Then let's move. They didn't get far before the first wave of rebels intercepted them. A dozen Zalari warriors, their dark armor reflecting the storm's eerie light, stood between them and the spire. Their leader, a massive figure with silver tattoos running down his arms, stepped forward, twin energy blades crackling to life. You will not reach the spire, he declared, voice cold. Varen has already won. Rylan sighed, raising his rifle. You guys really need to work on your timing. And then the fight began. The storm within. The battle was brutal. Rylan moved with practiced precision, his rifle tearing through the first two warriors before they could react. But the Zalari were fast, too fast. One of them closed the distance, slamming into him with enough force to knock the breath from his lungs. Rylan hit the ground hard, barely rolling out of the way as a blade stabbed where his chest had been a second ago. He fired from the hip, the shot catching his attacker in the shoulder, sending the Zalari sprawling. Zyra, meanwhile, was a storm of her own. Her energy blades carved through the rebels like a dancer moving through a deadly rhythm, her power crackling in the air. But Rylan could see it, the slight hesitation in her movements. The exhaustion creeping in. She was pushing herself past her limit. And Varen was still ahead. Rylan clenched his jaw. We don't have time for this. Zyra gritted her teeth, raising a hand. A pulse of energy exploded outward, sending the remaining rebels flying. She swayed, but didn't fall. We move, she commanded. They ran. Through the storm. Through the ruins of a forgotten war. Through the threshold of something far older than either of their species. And at the top of the spire, Varen stood waiting. The breaking point. Varen turned as they approached, a cruel smile playing at his lips. The key, an obsidian artifact pulsing with unnatural light, hovered between his hands. The air around it shimmered with raw energy, distorting reality itself. "You're too late," Varen said smoothly. "The seal is already breaking." Zyra took a slow step forward. "You do not understand what you are doing." Varen laughed. "Don't I?" He gestured toward the storm. Toward the pulsating black vein spreading across the landscape. "Our ancestors feared this power," Varen continued. "They locked it away because they could not wield it. But I can." Rylan tightened his grip on his rifle. "You're out of your damn mind." Varen's golden eyes flickered toward him. "And you, human? Why do you fight for a cause that isn't yours?" Rylan didn't hesitate. "Because I know what happens when people like you think they can control something they don't understand." Varen smirked. "Then watch closely." And he plunged the key into the spire. The final choice. The world shattered. A shockwave of pure darkness erupted from the spire, rippling across the land, consuming everything in its path. The air turned thick, suffocating, as the very fabric of reality seemed to tear open. And from the rift, something moved. Zyra screamed. Not in fear. In rage. She launched herself at Varen, energy crackling around her in an uncontrollable storm. Their blades clashed, light and darkness colliding in a deadly dance. Rylan barely had time to think before the rift began to expand. The presence from his vision, the thing beyond the veil, was coming through. He had one shot. One chance to stop it. His gaze snapped to the key, still embedded in the spire. Energy swirled around it, unstable. If he destroyed it now, it might seal the rift. Or it might kill them all. Zyra and Varen fought furiously, but Rylan knew, this was the real battle. The choice was his. And he didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle. And fired. The key shattered. And the universe screamed. Beyond the veil. The moment Rylan pulled the trigger, time seemed to fracture. The obsidian key splintered into 1,000 shards, each one pulsing with the remnants of an ancient power. A blinding shockwave erupted from the spire, tearing through the storm-racked sky, consuming everything in its path. For a single breath, there was silence. Then, the world broke open. The eye of oblivion. Rylan was thrown to the ground, his body skidding across the shattered stone of the spire's peak. His head pounded. His vision swam. The air felt wrong, thick, heavy, humming with something beyond his comprehension. Slowly, he forced himself to look up. The sky was no longer the sky. Where there had once been storm clouds and lightning, there was now a gaping void. A tear in reality itself. From its depths, something loomed. Something vast. Something awake. Rylan's breath hitched. The visions he had seen before had not prepared him for this. The presence from beyond the seal was not just a being. It was a force. A consciousness older than time. It had no true shape, only shifting darkness, tendrils of void curling outward, stretching toward the broken world. And then, it spoke. Not in words. Not in sound. But in thoughts that buried themselves into his mind. You presume to defy the inevitable. Rylan clenched his teeth against the crushing weight of the voice. He felt his very existence waver, as if he were nothing more than dust before a hurricane. The seal had been shattered. And now, reality itself hung by a thread. The price of power. Zyra staggered beside him, her violet eyes burning with pain and fury. Blood dripped from a wound on her temple, but she barely seemed to notice. Her focus was locked on the entity spilling from the rift. Varen, however, was laughing. He stood near the spire's edge, arms outstretched, as if basking in the presence of the void. His golden eyes were wide, his voice exultant. "You see?" he shouted. "This is what was hidden from us. This is the power our ancestors feared." Rylan pushed himself up, shaking off the nausea threatening to consume him. "Varen, you idiot. You think you can control that?" He pointed at the rift, where the void entity was shifting, twisting, growing. Varen turned toward him, his expression almost serene. "Control?" He chuckled. "No. I am merely welcoming our salvation." Rylan's gut twisted. Varen had never wanted to wield the power. He had wanted to serve it. Zyra moved before Rylan could stop her. Her blade flashed in the stormlight, a streak of violet energy cutting through the air. Varen barely had time to react. The strike was swift. Precise. Final. Varen's breath hitched as the blade pierced his chest. He looked down in shock, his hands trembling as dark blood seeped from the wound. Zyra's voice was barely above a whisper. "You have doomed us all." Varen exhaled, a broken smile still on his lips. "No." His gaze drifted upward, toward the shifting entity in the rift. "It is only beginning." Then, the light left his eyes. And he was gone. A desperate gamble. The spire shook violently as the rift expanded, the void tendrils stretching further into reality. Rylan turned to Zyra. "Tell me you have a plan." She wiped the blood from her cheek, her expression grim. "There is only one way to seal it." Rylan swallowed hard. "I'm guessing it's not an easy one." Zyra hesitated. For the first time, he saw something unfamiliar in her eyes. Doubt. "If the key was whole, we could have reversed the seal," she admitted. "But now, the only way to close the rift is to replace what was lost." Rylan frowned. "What does that mean?" Zyra met his gaze. "It means a life must be given in exchange." A chill ran down Rylan's spine. "You're talking about a sacrifice." Zyra nodded. "A being of equal energy must take the key's place to restore balance." Rylan exhaled sharply. "And let me guess, that means you." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Everything in Rylan rebelled against the idea. They had come too far, fought too hard, for it to end like this. "There has to be another way," he argued. "There is not." Zyra's voice was firm, but her expression softened. "You do not understand, Rylan. I am already bound to this seal. My connection to it is the only reason I still stand. If I do not act, this world, and countless others, will be consumed." Rylan clenched his fists. "I refuse to accept that." "Then you doom us all." Rylan felt his heart hammering. His thoughts raced. There has to be another way. And then. An idea. It was reckless. Impossible. But maybe, just maybe. It could work. Rylan turned back to the rift, his mind racing. "What if it's not just one life?" he said slowly. Zyra frowned. "What? What if it doesn't have to be you alone?" Rylan's pulse thundered in his ears as he pieced it together. The key was powerful because it was made from a fusion of energy. What if we do the same? Zyra's expression shifted, uncertainty warring with hope. "It is dangerous," she murmured. "You do not possess the energy required." "Then take it," Rylan said, stepping closer. "Use me. If it means stopping this thing, use me." Zyra hesitated. "Rylan. No time to argue." He grabbed her hand. "Just do it." Zyra's eyes burned with something he couldn't name. Then, she nodded. And everything changed. The binding. The moment Zyra channeled her power into him, Rylan felt his very soul ignite. Raw energy coursed through his veins, a fusion of human will and Zalari power. The pain was unbearable, but he held on. Together, they reached toward the rift. The void being recoiled, sensing what was happening. It lashed out, tendrils of darkness striking toward them. But Rylan and Zyra stood firm, their combined energy forming a barrier against the encroaching abyss. And then, with a final surge of will, they sealed the rift. The void screamed, twisting violently as reality snapped back into place. The spire trembled one last time. Then, silence. The storm dissipated. The sky cleared. And the world was saved. A new path. Rylan collapsed, his body drained of all strength. Zyra knelt beside him, breathing hard, her own energy nearly spent. They had done it. They had won. Rylan managed a weak smirk. Told you there was another way. Zyra exhaled, shaking her head. You are impossible. The distant hum of engines signaled the return of the Revenant's forces. But this time, there was no hostility. Just weary understanding. Zyra looked at Rylan. What now? He chuckled weakly. Guess we find out together. She hesitated, then reached out a hand. Rylan took it. Their fates had been bound by war, by loss, by impossible choices. But now, for the first time, their future was theirs. End.